Now, in my 1990 book on Nicolas Guillen, published by University of Missouri Press, the book is called Nicolas Guillen, Popular Poet of the Caribbean. We continue the quest to build a pan-Caribbean literary theory, a sui generis Caribbean literary theory, on solid scholarship into the African intellectual tradition, arguing that, quote, to appreciate in its fullness the West Indianness of Guillen's poetry, we must first fashion a pan-Caribbean poetics that will be truly Caribbean. And then I go on to say, this in chapter 1. This book then will seek to analyze the poetry of Nicolas Guillen from the perspective of a peculiarly Caribbean sensibility, using what might be tentatively labeled a Caribbean literary theory. The literary theory will, in the spirit of Alejo Carpentier's vision, be invented as the book proceeds. The existence of the Caribbean sensibility is inextricably linked to this literary theory and has been discussed, if not demonstrated in this chapter. This was the end of the chapter. It is not possible to demonstrate in the proper sense of the term the existence of a pan-Caribbean identity and culture. This question has to be approached with the spirit of Aimé Césaire's defiant, if somewhat immature declaration. Well, that's my editorial judgment. But I was writing for University of Missouri Press. Take me as I am, I don't adapt myself to you. That's Aimé Césaire from the Cahiers, you remember that? My approach to Guillen is exactly analogous to the popular approach to the Caïso. The ultimate determiner of the artistic merits of the Caïso, as Attila, famous Caïsonian, is at pains to point out, is the vox populi, and I quote from Attila. The judges who decided on your excellence or otherwise, he says was, but I think it might be good, the general public, the sternest and most merciless adjudicators as they have always been since history began. End of a quote from Attila in his book on the Caïso. There is in place an appreciating principle in the case of the Caïso, as in the case of all popular literary forms. In fact, this appreciating principle has been invoked, indirectly at least, in Warner's book, in Rolle's articles on the Caïso, as well as in Jirena Villalobos' book on the Vallenato. These are books that I quote. Their studies could not have been conceived otherwise. Furthermore, Roller, that's Gordon Roller, presents his book on Edward Kamau Brathwaite as an act of cimarronaje, of maroonness, of rebellion in the arena of literary scholarship. It is published in defiance of what he calls the plantation press. It must then also invoke the pan-Caribbean appreciating principle as the definer of literariness and measure of literary worth. In this book, I will do so explicitly. I will analyze the poetry of Nicolas Guillen using my training and experience in the disciplines of literary criticism, along with the sensibility of the people who assess the Caïso. The resulting study will be a practical example of Caribbean literary criticism based on a Caribbean literary theory. It will represent a radical development in that theory. At best, this book will be a convincing demonstration and a thought-provoking exposition. At worst, it will be one man's view and view of a critical approximation to the uncontested beauty of Nicolas Guillen's poetry. In either case, it will advance. It starts. Libunde and Buyeringe are two of the cultural expressions of the total repertoire of popular oral literature developed by Panamanians, by Panama's Afro-descendants. Skips on. Africans from Darien would be deemed to be colonial blacks, and of course the Bunde and Buyeringe are peculiar to them. The song and dance form known as the Congo is a cultural tradition that is peculiar not only to Africans from Colombia, but to Africans from the environs of Panama's Portobelo, Colón, and Costa Rica. The cultural expressions known as reggae and caïso are proper to West Indian blacks. In this chapter, we will explore the profound connections between all of these forms, a connection rooted in their common base, the African cultural heritage. And it goes on. Eurocentric scholars tend to focus on those aspects of the African cultural heritage which would validate the theory of white supremacy. Afrocentric scholars seek to emancipate themselves and their people from mental slavery. Since Eurocentric scholars are necessarily uninformed about the African intellectual tradition, they will always remain at the superficial level in their approach to African cultural phenomena. They are interested mainly in taxonomy, in assigning, imposing in fact, labels to the phenomena they study. These labels, however, do not capture what the phenomena are essentially, because the Eurocentric scholar is not interested in knowing what the phenomena are essentially. Eurocentrism posits that it is impossible to study African cultural phenomena using an African theoretical matrix. Goes on further, talking about reggae in Spanish. A careful study of reggae in Spanish will show that this cultural phenomenon is profoundly connected to Bunde and Buyeringe. Gerardo Maloney Francis, our distinguished coordinator, friend, man of letters, poet, sociologist, writer, videographer, activist, and diplomat, that's what the text says, and it's true, has played a fundamental role in bringing reggae to the attention of the West Indian Panamanian community. She goes on to show that how that is so, but you have 30 minutes and it's after lunch. Whereas reggae, we skip to whereas reggae became popular in the 1970s, the Kaiso, generally termed calypso through hypercorrection, has been the most popular oral form in the West Indian Panamanian community. Maloney produced a video documentary, I believe that's going to be included in the presentations there, on the Kaiso in Panama. It is now almost 2 decades old. I don't know if you renewed it. It's the same, okay. But it is still relevant, even today. And this was written in, Xiomara wrote this in 2010, so it's still relevant in 2010, it's still relevant in 2013. It shows a spontaneous and somewhat rustic Kaiso jam session of West Indian Panamanians. The music is provided by the guitar and the very popular cuatro. The cuatro is a sort of ukulele, as well as a variety of percussion instruments, most of which are improvised. Festival time is a magical moment which facilitates the contact between man and the transcendental forces. At carnival time, the city of Port of Spain becomes a festival site, infused with transcendental rhythm. The rhythm that, as we pointed out in the preceding chapter, is for Kofi Kisi Dumpro, polyrhythmicity, foundations of African philosophy. So we want to connect, all of this study is based on solid research. It's not airy-fairy. We're looking at the African intellectual tradition and the African cultural tradition. Then the next follows a section entitled the Congo Festival, and then Maloney presents some most, not Maloney, Aldeama, presents some most, I'm going back to her work, presents some most insightful consideration in the section entitled The Poetry of Gerardo Maloney Francis and of DJ Black. After several pages of inspiring literary analysis, Aldeano concludes, I quote, DJ Black, I'm quoting the book, I'm not saying it myself. DJ Black's La Canción del Chucha de su Madre, I'm quoting now, it is a cry of social protest. The strong language of reproach employed by the author comes out of a tradition that can be identified as African. From the dawn of history, African women and men of words have functioned as the conscience of the community. DJ Black's work is then the sort of reproach sung by griots from time immemorial, following the inspiration of Legba, or Eshu. Legba is the messenger of the gods, as was Hermes of the Greeks, who is originally Impu, or Anubis of humanity's essential classical civilization developed by Africans from the Nile Valley. That is Hermes comes from Impu, who the Greeks call Anubis. And Legba comes from Impu as well. And he's the prototypical griot, the singer of blame songs, that's Legba or Impu. The Cuban Nicolas Guillen gives expression to essentially the same sentiments of social protest in Savas, the poem that we quoted. A poem about a good Negro, a poor Cuban of the 1920s living a very chucha de su madre life. He is one of the wretched of the earth, to use Frantz Fanon's terminology. The poem begins, and we quoted it before, I saw Savas, the innocuous Negro, begging his bread from door to door. The poet counsels, that's going back, this is talking about Guillen. The poet counsels a change in attitude, a revolutionary awakening. Get up and get your bread, don't just beg for it. Get up and get your light, your true hope. And the poem ends with this exhortation, Caramba, Savas, don't be so crazy. Savas, don't be so stupid. Don't be so good. The caramba here used by Guillen is exactly the same as DJ Bach's Chucha de su madre, or the coño of the street. Maloney's poem, The Handler, I'll read it again for you. Robert, take a good look at things. All your life you have handled buses, hammers, machines, lottery board, race horses, Coca-Cola carts, big and small saws, nets and shrimp shells, pick and shovel and muse on the canal, rakes in gardens, suitcases and send-offs in hotels, so much so that your weariness is now ages old. Once and for all, handle a weapon. Robert is a West Indian Panamanian, another one of the wretched of the earth, another one of those forgotten about by the Chucha de su madre members of the Congress. Remember, I'm quoting Aldeano, I'm not saying these words myself. Maloney ends his poem with the exhortation, once and for all, handle a weapon. Translated into the street language, DJ Black type language, this would be, oh shit man, once and for all, handle a weapon. Handle a weapon, chucha de su madre. That's how you should translate it into that kind of language. I wouldn't, I don't use that language myself. And you recall the profound Declaration of Emancipation, the profound Declaration of Emancipation from mental slavery, couched in Earl Lovelace's latest novel, Is Just a Movie. I'm not fucking taking that. I'm not